I will rise when he calls. He was sitting down on the couch watching NASCAR when she asked him to take out the garbage because he smelled it. Of course, he didn't really want to do it right then. So what would be his excuse? Wait for the next commercial. Or maybe, my back hurts. What he chose was, well, I can't do that right now because the Federal Reserve just raised interest rates this week. Of course, she said, what has that got to do with the price of tea in China? He said, what has the garbage got to do with the price of tea in China? But then, he decided to explain his excuse. And so he said, hey, if you don't want to do something, one excuse is as good as another. Now, most of us are pretty good at finding excuses, but from our study today in Genesis chapter 40, we're going to learn that there is something much better for us to find than excuses. In our last episode of Joseph getting ahead in a getting by world, as the credits came up, Joseph was in prison in Egypt. We had followed him from his dysfunctional family with 3 stepmothers and 10 stepbrothers, who resented him for being daddy's favorite, for tattling, and for always bragging on his big grand dreams. We followed him to Egypt, where his jealous brothers sold him into slavery. There, he prospered and got ahead, rising to the head of the household. But then the plot thickened. His Potiphar's wife tried to seduce him and then force him. And when he rejected her advances in another dramatic plot twist, she falsely accused him of rape. And he was thrown into prison. Maybe today you find yourself imprisoned by your circumstances, maybe trapped in some situation that you feel powerless to escape or even change. Someone here today feels imprisoned by your addiction, by your sin, by your guilt, or even by the expectations of others. If you are comfortable in your prison cell, then you can use just about any excuse to give up and stay where you are. After all, if you don't want to do something, one excuse is as good as another. But if you long to be free, you can do what Joseph did in this story today and get ahead, as he does in Genesis chapter 40, by looking for opportunities instead of looking for excuses. Join me in Genesis chapter 40. And as the curtain rises, the scene changes from the royal prison where Joseph has once again risen to being in charge, to the royal throne room where trouble is brewing. Genesis 40, verse 1. It came to pass after these things that the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was angry with his 2 officers, the chief butler and the chief baker. We don't know what the chief butler and the chief baker did, but when we see the word butler, we think of this guy in a tux, kind of like Alfred in Batman, some stuffy guy in tails. But this is a very important job in the ancient Near East. The word is literally cupbearer. He would be the one who would kind of be like the Secret Service for the king. He would make sure the king wasn't poisoned. The chief baker would be important not only because he made the staple of bread and the important pastries and cinnamon rolls, but also because he would provide the ceremonial bread for the dead. So what did these 2 guys do to upset the king? Did the baker burn the toast? Did the butler spill the wine? Did they take that girl? Both at the same time? Maybe it was something they did together, like talk about their boss behind his back. Or maybe it was one crime. Someone took the silverware, someone lost the remote control, and he yet doesn't know who did it. So we arrest both of them pending the investigation. Verse 3, he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard. We learned last chapter that his name is Potiphar. And in the prison, the place where Joseph was confined. They now are in contact with Joseph. And in verse 4, the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them. And notice what he did. He served them. So they were in custody for a while. Now remember, in Potiphar's house, Joseph rose from slave, head of the slaves, head of the household. Now he's thrown into prison for a crime he didn't commit, and he rises from a prisoner, head of the prisoners, to the head of the prison. And while he's there, we saw last week his success, his getting ahead, even in a bad situation, was because of the way he reacted to the bad things that happened to him. This week in chapter 40, he'll still react in the right way. But this week I want to focus on something different. Let's focus on how Joseph looked for opportunities to serve rather than excuses to quit. The first excuse he doesn't use is, I didn't notice. Don't say I didn't notice. Pay attention and look for opportunities to serve like Joseph did. Verse 5, the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, had a dream. Both of them, each man's dream in one night, and each man's dream with its own interpretation. Now it's interesting to tell your dreams to other people. But you remember, that's what got Joseph into trouble in the first place. But now he's going to tell others about their dreams, and that's going to get him out of trouble and save lives. Maybe there's something here for us. Tell others your dreams and get grief. But if you help others achieve their dreams, you might get ahead. So the butler and the baker wake up, and the butler says, hey, I had a dream. And the baker says, so did I. Tell me your dream. I had 3 loaves, and I had 3 this. Oh, really? What does it mean? I don't know. Neither do I. So verse 6, they're still arguing about what it means. When Joseph came in to them in the morning, and he looked at them, and he saw that they were sad. I love what Joseph does here. He's doing his job. He's serving others. So he came to them in the morning, maybe bringing breakfast. There they are in the cell. Butler, the baker, and probably the next cell, the candlestick maker. And Joseph looked at them. He noticed they were sad. Now Joseph had every reason to feel sorry for himself. He had a great excuse to be depressed. He was in prison in a foreign land for something that he didn't do. He might be looking at the floor and not even noticing what's going on around him. But no, he's chipper. Top of the morning to you guys. They might look and say, what are you so happy about? But he was looking at others, making eye contact, noticing subtle clues that something is wrong. Beyond the obvious, hey, we're all in prison here. So you see what he's doing? He's paying attention, looking for opportunities. Good for him. Isn't it true that a lot of your life is determined by where you look? Do you look for excuses or opportunities? For reasons to complain or reasons to rejoice? Do you look for reasons to worry or reasons to hope? Are you looking inward and downward, or are you looking outward and upward? You know, what you see tells a lot about who you are and what you care about. Do you see money on the sidewalk, or do you see stars in the sky? Do you see mistakes to criticize, or do you see heroic efforts to cheer? Do you see flesh down a blouse, or do you see a person with thoughts and feelings and hurts? When I'm reading the 4 Gospels, the biographies of Jesus, I love to notice Jesus' eyes. What was he looking at? We saw a few months ago, Jesus was a people watcher. For instance, Matthew chapter 9, verse 36, when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion for them. Jesus could have been looking inward and downward. Don't these people know who I am? Why won't anyone listen to me? I know what they're going to do to me. But he didn't do that. He wasn't looking downward or inward. He was looking outward and upward. He felt compassion for them because he was looking at them. And in Luke chapter 19, verse 5, Jesus was literally looking upward when he saw Zacchaeus in a tree. If Jesus wasn't looking up, if he was looking down, feeling sorry for himself, he never would have seen Zacchaeus. But rather than having his nose in his cell phone, he's looking up and he sees people, and that makes all the difference. Jesus always was looking for people, even in the trees. This is what Joseph did in prison. He didn't look at his prison bars and feel sorry for himself. He didn't look at the grime on the walls and complain. He looked around at people and he looked for opportunities. I say it quite often. You'll hear it a lot from me. My favorite quote, the tragedy of life is not what happens to us, but what we miss. We miss a lot of beauty because we're looking in the wrong places. We miss a lot of opportunities because we are not looking for them. If Joseph had not been looking that morning and seen their sad faces, hadn't noticed their long looks and asked, humanly speaking, he never would have gotten out of prison. He would have died there. His family would have died without his intervention to feed them. We would have never even heard of Joseph. Now, wouldn't that, what he missed, could have missed have been much more tragic than what really happened to him, just being sold into slavery and being thrown into prison while innocent. It's a little bit, but it's huge. He looked and he saw and he noticed. And in verse 7, he didn't just see, he asked Pharaoh's officers who were with him in the custody of his Lord's house, saying, "Why do you look so sad today?" He could have noticed and he could have just kept on going. He had a lot of excuses. How about, "It's none of my business"? How about, you ever use this one? "I don't want to get involved." Or how about, "You think you got problems? I got problems of my own." But he didn't use any of those excuses. He paid attention, and then he paid attention to them, and he asked. So let's go to school on Joseph. When you're golfing, on the green, you can go to school on the person who putts first. You can watch them as they putt towards the hole to see which way the ball breaks, to see how fast or slow the green is. Let's learn from Joseph. He goes first. Let's learn from him. He says, "I notice, I pay attention." When we pay attention, we find opportunities. But oftentimes, instead of looking for opportunities, we look for excuses. So we say, "But officer, I didn't notice the speed limit sign." What does he say? "Oh, that's okay. Just go ahead then." Or, "But boss, I didn't notice that customer standing there waiting to be served." Does your boss say, "Oh, that's all right then. I don't pay you enough to actually take the initiative and go and look for someone to serve"? Or how about giving that excuse to God? "But God, I didn't notice all those people living and dying in my neighborhood without Jesus." Does he say, "Oh, that's all right. I know those other things are way more important than the eternal salvation of your neighbors"? No, that's not the way it works, right? We spend less time looking for excuses and more time looking for opportunities. If we tried harder to actually pay attention in life, we would be much more productive, more successful, and more joyful. So what's your excuse? Let's notice the second excuse that Joseph didn't use, and it's, "I can't." Don't say "I can't." Say "I will," and try. That's what Joseph does. He tries, and again, he finds an opportunity to serve. Joseph could have kept on going, saying, "You don't know what your dream means? Tough luck. Don't you know how busy, how important I am?" But he says, "Do not interpretations belong to God?" Now that sounds like the beginning of an excuse, like, who knows? But it's not an excuse. What he does is he takes an opportunity to give glory to God. "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell them to me, please. I may not be able to tell you what it means, but I will try." So he's going to tell them not about how smart he is, but about how great God is. Isn't that important? Dreams were very important in ancient Egypt, and dream interpretation was a lucrative business. You can just imagine late-night infomercials offering dream interpretation for $9.99 a minute. But they are in prison, and the butler and the baker don't have any access to a dream interpreter. In Israel, dreams were important too, but it seemed everyone there could interpret them. Remember, Joseph had a dream, his brothers figured it out, his father figured it out, everyone knew what the dreams meant. Joseph himself knew a thing or two about what dreams meant, even though his hadn't come true, right? He says, "I will try." But he doesn't take credit for his ability. He acknowledged interpretations belong to God. He gives God the glory, but notice he takes responsibility. "Tell it to me, please." The Bible makes it very clear that all of our talents, all of our abilities come as a gift from God. Are you good at teaching children, growing food, fixing things? Who gave you that ability? You say, "Okay, God gave me the ability, but I applied myself. I got the education. I got the experience. I put it to use." Oh yeah? In Deuteronomy 8:18, the Lord says, "You shall remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you power to get wealth." Who gave you the time? Who gave you the energy? Who gave you the breath to do what you've done? Whatever you do to earn a living, who gave you the power to do that? And the Apostle Paul puts it even more bluntly in 1 Corinthians 4:7. He says, "Who makes you to differ from another? What do you think makes you stand out? What do you have that makes you different from someone else? What do you have that you did not receive? Now, if you did indeed receive it, why do you boast as if you had not received it? Now, Joseph had a lot going against him, but he had a lot going for him. And here he humbly realizes what he hadn't before, that what he could do was a gift from God. And what he was a product of choices he had made. But God had given him every single ability and the freedom to choose. So he took responsibility for his own life, but he gave all the credit and the praise to God. Good example. In verse 8, he said, "Tell me." Now in verse 9, chief butler told his dream to Joseph and said to him, "Behold, in my dream a vine was before me." Well, he's a butler. He deals with wine. "In the vine were 3 branches. It was, though it budded, its blossoms shot forth, and its clusters brought forth ripe grapes. Then Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, and I pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand." Now naturally his dream was relevant to him, his cupbearer. He was responsible for bringing the wine to the king. Why did he think it had to mean something? Couldn't it have just been a dream? But it was so vivid to him. It seemed important, and he was sad with no interpretation. So, Joseph says, "Here is the interpretation of it." Well, that's pretty confident, isn't it? Joseph didn't say, "I think, it could mean, in my opinion." He says, "This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days." Whoa! How did he get that? I mean, some dreams are pretty obvious, but where did he get 3 days? Maybe it was 3 minutes, or 3 hours, or 3 weeks, or 3 months, or 3 years, or 3 options. Who knows? He's going out on a limb here, isn't he? "Within 3 days," verse 13, "Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your place, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand according to the former manner," just like the old days, when you were his butler. Here's what it means. Here's what's going to happen. In 3 days, great news. You're going to be back to your old job. Now, is Joseph saying that this dream is from God? Doesn't say so. If so, why is God giving this dream to an unbeliever? Or is Joseph saying that all dreams mean something and all dreams come true? His sure haven't so far. We can't be sure. But we do know this dream is true. Interpretation is true. But Joseph has the faith to believe, and he knows that it will come true. So he stops things to ask for a favor from the butler in return for this favor that he gave him. "But remember me," verse 14, "when it is well with you." Not if, when it is well with you. "And please show kindness to me." Do me a solid. "Make mention of me to Pharaoh and get me out of this place." As Joseph resigned himself to his fate, rationalizing that it must be God's will? No, he's doing all he can to change his circumstances while rising above them and allowing God to change him through them. Is he in a bad place? Sure he is. He knows it. Yes, verse 15, "Indeed, I was stolen away from the land of Hebrews. I have also done nothing here that they should put me in this dungeon. I am innocent." Now, he could just be angry and bitter for what his brothers did to him, what Potiphar's wife did to him. He does maintain his innocence, like most prisoners do, but this guy really is innocent, and he knows he doesn't deserve to be there. So in verse 16, as soon as he's done giving the good news to the butler, the chief baker says, "Whoa, whoa, me first. No, do me next. I'm next." The chief baker saw the interpretation was good. He said to Joseph, "I also was in my dream, and there were 3 white baskets on my head. In the uppermost basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, and the birds ate them out of the basket on my head." Another dream that fits his life. He's talking about baked goods. He's a baker. So what does that mean? Verse 18, the confident, "This is the interpretation of it." Not it might be, it could be. He says the 3 baskets are 3 days. Again, how did he know? "Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head from you, except not restore you. He will hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat your flesh from you." Whoa. Now the baker's sorry he asked. "I think I'll go get a second opinion." "Oh, wait a minute. There is no one else to give me one." He said, "Why is his good and mine is bad?" From Joseph's point of view, he's really gone out on a limb here. He's not only made two very specific predictions, he's even given them a limited time frame. This is no slick fortune teller or fortune cookie making a vague prediction about something that might happen sometime. He says, you will be restored in 3 days. You will be beheaded in 3 days. No qualifications, no maybes. What if nothing happened? Well, they would know on day 4, wouldn't they? Joseph would look pretty silly. His reputation, his chance for redemption would be gone. He could have been paralyzed by fear. He said, what if I'm wrong? He said nothing. Who would blame him? It would be a pretty good excuse, right? I can't predict the future, can you? The famous wise man, Yogi Berra, said, making predictions is really hard, especially about the future. But God has given him a gift, and this is his one shot, and so he takes it. Instead of finding an excuse, he finds courage. Instead of making excuses, I can't. He takes the opportunity and says, I will, and he tries. Might he miss? Yeah, but I remind you, the great philosopher Wayne Gretzky, who scored more goals than anyone in NHL history, said 100% of the shots you don't take don't go in. 100% of the schools you don't apply to don't accept you. 100% of the teams you don't try out for, you don't make. 100% of the questions you don't ask don't get answered. So instead of coming up with lame excuses why we can't do this or do that, how about if we say, I will try. I may miss, but I will try. Say that with me. I may miss, but I will try. Here we go. I may miss, but I will try. If you're afraid of missing, you never take the shot. You never take the shot, you never make one. Joseph could have said, nobody helped me when I got to Egypt, so why should I help you? No. He says, I'll try to help you anyway. Interpreting dreams is pretty tricky business, but I will try. So what's your excuse? Can you try anyway? There's a third and final excuse that Joseph doesn't use. I forgot. Don't say, I forgot. Remember. Write it down. Find an opportunity to serve. Now, he doesn't forget here, but somebody else does. Surprise, surprise, verse 20. It came to pass on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday. Well, what do you know about that? That he made a feast for all the servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief butler and the chief baker among the servants. He restored the chief butler to his butlership again, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph had interpreted to them. Well, the dreams were fulfilled, quite literally, exactly as Joseph had said. You would think that impressed the butler tremendously. He saw Joseph went 2 for 2, and he also got the day right. You'd think he'd tell everybody about this amazing dream that he had, the prediction that Joseph had made, especially Pharaoh, because Joseph had asked him to. But no, he doesn't do it. Verse 23, the chief butler did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. You saw it coming. Here it is. The butler did it. He did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. Now that is cold, isn't it? He probably figures, what's the point? Joseph will never know. I'll never see him again. What's in it for me? You see, usually forgetfulness is thoughtlessness. Oh, sure, if you're suffering from dementia, you have an excuse to forget. But for most of us, we can remember what's important to us. And the butler, he's got to remember, Joseph is rotting alone in prison, innocent. To him, that's not really a big deal. Oh, it's okay, because God is still in control. Joseph is right where God needs him. In Egypt, in the bullpen, ready to go. When the crisis arises in Genesis chapter 41, which we'll look at next week. But that will be 2 long years for Joseph to sit and stew and look for opportunities instead of excuses. 2 long years he's forgotten. So he is where he is through the malice of his brothers, through the spite of Potiphar's wife, and now through the forgetfulness of the butler. Joseph is where he is. Oh, I know the butler didn't mean to do him any harm like the brothers and Potiphar's wife did, but to Joseph, the results are exactly the same. So while we may really forget to do something once in a while, let's not use it for an excuse to not do what we know we should do. As James says in chapter 4, verse 17, therefore to him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him It is sin. These are called the sins of omission rather than sins of commission. Sins of commission are the ones that we do. Sins of omission are the things that we should do, but we leave undone. I'm afraid when we get to heaven, stand before Christ, maybe our sins of omission will vastly outnumber our sins of commission. The hungry we didn't feed, the stranger we didn't take in, the prisoner like Joseph we didn't visit, the hurting we didn't notice, the big thing we didn't try, the lost we didn't tell. It's like in the story of the Good Samaritan. It is not enough to see the hurt and bleeding stranger, but it's actually about doing something, helping them. So much of religion is, thou shalt not, don't do this, don't do that. But really, loving God is not negative, it's positive, what we do. So let's do what Hebrews 13:16 says. Do not forget to do good and to share, for with such sacrifices God is well pleased. God is not well pleased when we don't do this and don't do that. He's well pleased when we do the right thing. Remember to do good. If you have a hard time remembering, tie a string around your finger. If you forget what that means, write it down. Maybe write it down on the doorpost of your house. Put a note on your mirror, on the notepad, on your smartphone, on the wallpaper, on your computer. You can remember it if you want to, right? We can remember what's important to us. Say that with me. I can remember what's important to me. I can remember what's important to me. Do you really want to not make excuses, but find opportunities, make it a priority, and if you want to, you can remember it. Joseph got ahead in a getting by world because he didn't use excuses like, I didn't notice. No, he paid attention. He didn't say, I can't. He said, I will try. He didn't say, I forgot. He remembered. The butler forgot. Joseph got ahead. In spite of his brother's malice, in spite of his spurned lover, in spite of his butler's forgetfulness, not just because God was with him, but because instead of looking for excuses, he looked for opportunities. You see, the person who really wants to do something will find a way. But the person who doesn't want to do something will find an excuse. What about you? The strong person makes choices, makes changes, makes history. The weak person makes excuses. Overcomers find the time, find the energy, find opportunities. Underachievers, people under the circumstances, find excuses. So which person do you want to be? Which person do you choose to be? What's your excuse for looking for excuses instead of looking for opportunities? And what is your excuse for not giving your heart to Jesus or following him in believer's baptism? Jesus told a story in Luke chapter 14, verse 16. A certain man gave a great supper and invited many, and sent his servant at supper time to say to those who were invited, come, for all things are now ready. But they all with one accord began to make excuses. The first said to him, I've bought a piece of ground and I must go and see it. I ask to have me excused. Another said, I bought 5 yoke of oxen and I'm going to test them. I ask you to have me excused. Still another said, I've married a wife and she won't let me. Therefore, I cannot come. They all began to make excuses. If you actually don't want to experience God's love, Christ's forgiveness, the Holy Spirit's power in your life, one excuse is as good as another. Or should I say, one excuse is as bad as another. What excuse are you using to put off doing what you know you should do, giving your heart to Jesus, following him in believer's baptism? Let us pray. Lord, today we thank you for the privilege of having a choice of what we will look at and what we will look for. Help us today to look for opportunities and not excuses. Help us to be like Joseph. Lord, help us to be more like Jesus by noticing people and by doing the right thing and not forgetting. Lord, if there's one here who's never trusted in Christ as their Savior, I pray that this day, this very day, before they put it off again with a lame excuse, they would surrender their heart to you. They'd admit their sin, and they'd surrender in faith and accept Jesus' gift of salvation so freely offered at Calvary's cross. You're here today with your head still bowed and your eyes still closed, without Christ as your Savior. You're not sure you're a Christian, or you're sure you're not. The Bible says all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. All of us are in the same boat. None of us can save ourselves. All of our righteousness is as filthy rags. We can't earn our way into heaven, otherwise Jesus wasted his time dying on the cross. But he died because there was no other way. Jesus said, I am the way. No one comes to the Father but by me. Would you this morning receive this gift as it's freely offered, a gift of grace, God giving you what you do not deserve, by faith, you accepting, believing what you cannot see. Would you say something like this in your heart to the Lord and mean it? Lord, I know I'm a sinner. I know I can't save myself. But the best way I know how, I accept your gift of salvation. I ask you to come into my heart and my life. Forgive me for Jesus' sake. Make me a new person. Make me your child. If you're still bad, if you prayed that prayer this morning for the very first time you meant it, would you allow me to pray for you? Would you come down here and pray with me? Would you shake my hand at the door and say, Pastor, I prayed that prayer with you this morning. I meant it. I'd love to pray with you, pray for you. If you're a Christian today and you're tired of making excuses for not doing the thing that you know you should do, or not stopping the thing that you should do, would you today look for an opportunity rather than looking for an excuse? Would you join me, please, as we sing All to Jesus?